Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Welcome to Diplomat's Desk. I am your host Meet. Let's put on a diplomat's head to read signals, incentives, and escalation risks when facts are contested and emotions are hot. The claim is explosive. Russia says Ukraine launched 91 long-range rounds at one of President Vladimir Putin's state residence in Russia's Novgorod region overnight into December 29, 2025, and Moscow vows retaliation. Ukraine's president flatly denies it, calling it typical Russian lies and accusing Moscow of trying to derail peace talks. And in the middle of it, US President Donald Trump speaks by phone with President Putin. With the Kremlin says Russia will review its stance in negotiation after the alleged attack. So what's true, what's uncertain, and what happens next? Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Ukraine attacked the presidential residence using 91 UAVs and that all were destroyed with no casualties or damage reported. Russia also says retaliation targets and timing have been determined, and Moscow will review its negotiation position while not necessarily quitting the talks outright. Ukraine's position is equally clear. Zelensky denies the allegation and warns Russia may be trying to create a pretext for strikes and sabotage negotiations. Now, we do not have independent public verification of the full claim, such as publicly released radar tracks, drone debris, chains of custody, or neutral third-party confirmation that the specific residence was the target. Reuters explicitly frames the story as a competing claims. Also unclear where Putin was at that particular point of time. As a diplomat, when the facts are disputed, you don't pick a side emotionally. You ask who benefits, what signals are being sent, and how do we prevent the next move from being catastrophic. Let's treat these carefully. These are the plausible strategic motives, not proven intent. First, signaling capability and reach. Striking or even appearing capable of striking. Deep inside Russia signals we can impose cost beyond the front line. In negotiation theory, that's leverage. It pressures the other side to take talks seriously. Second, deterrence by punishment. Ukraine has faced extensive missiles and drone attacks, a logic some state uses: if you hit our cities, your leadership infrastructure is not immune. That's a deterrence message, dangerous but comprehensible. Third, domestic and alliance optics. In long wars, leaders must show they are not powerless. Demonstrating reach can bolster domestic morale and reassure partners that aid is producing strategic effects, especially when negotiation risks looking like capitulation. Fourth, spoiler logic. If factions exist in many conflicts, there are actors who dislike compromise. If there were hardliners on the either side, a dramatic strike claim can complicate diplomacy. But here's the diplomat's caveat. Even if Ukraine had such motives, it does not prove it happened. It simply explains why, in principle, a party might consider that option. Now, why would Russia claim this if it didn't happen as described? Again, hypothesis. First, create negotiating leverage. Russia says it will review its position after the alleged attack. That is classic bargaining posture: raise the cost of the other side's proposal and justify a tougher line. Second, build a legal political narrative for escalation. Labeling an incident terrorism and unprecedented can be used to justify retaliation that might otherwise look escalatory, especially against high-value Ukrainian government size. Reuters reports Lavrov saying targets had been selected. Third, manage domestic expectation. If talks are unpopular among hawks, leader may need a story that explains why compromise is hard. We tried, but they attacked. That can preserve internal cohesion. Fourth, test US positioning. Trump's call with Putin occurring amid with this narrative becomes a diplomatic pressure point. Will Washington publicly accept Moscow's framing, urge restraint, or demand evidence? Bottom line, Russia may be telling the truth, exaggerating, or shaping perception. Diplomats plan for all three. Now, people hear hidden agenda and imagine a secret mastermind plan. Real diplomacy is usually more mundane: incentives, audiences, timing, and bargaining chips. So here are the most realistic hidden agendas, meaning secondary objectives. For Russia, strengthen justification for retaliation while hardening negotiation terms without formally walking away. For Ukraine, preserve negotiation space by denying involvement and reframing the incident as an attempted derailment. For the US, keep both parties at the table and extract real steps rather than symbolic ceasefire as described by Kremlin readout of the Trump Putin call. Diplomats rule watch what they do next, not only what they say. Now let's do scenario analysis, potential outcomes. I'm going to give you four scenarios, each with triggers and early indicators. Scenario first, calibrated retaliation. Talks continues, most likely. What it looks like. Russia conducts a limited high visibility strike, possibly framed as a proportionate, then returns to negotiations claiming it restored deterrence. Now, indicators are Russian statement emphasized response completed and door remains open. Retaliation hits symbolic or military targets, not mass casualty civilian infrastructure. Diplomatic consequences, talks survive, but Ukraine is pressured into tighter controls or monitoring proposals. This aligns with Russia's stated intent to review its position while not leaving the process. Scenario 2 is escalation spiral, high risk, medium probability. What it looks like is retaliation triggers counter retaliation. Each side expands target sets. Strike on leadership linked sites, command centers, or broad infrastructure. Public rhetoric shifts from reviewing terms to no talks possible. Consequence would be negotiations freeze, external actors scramble to prevent NATO Russia incidents, especially if weapons cross borders or air defense miscalculate. Scenario 3, information war dominates, battlefield continues unchanged. What it looks like is competing narrative persists. Neither side provides convincing proof. The frontline war continues largely on existing trajectories. Indicators would be more press briefings than operational changes. Third parties call for investigation, but none materializes. Consequence would be public trust in diplomacy erodes. Peace fatigue grows. Scenario 4. A verification push creates a diplomatic off-ramp. What it looks like is a neutral mechanism, perhaps via intermediaries seeks technical verification, debris telemetry, or independent monitoring of long-range drone launches. Indicators would be requests for third-party review, muted retaliation rhetoric paired with procedural proposals. Consequence would be reduces miscalculation risk, gives leader a face-saving way to step back. As a diplomat, you plan for scenario 2 even if you hope for scenario 1. Now, here's the hard truth. It is already a full-scale interstate war in terms of sustained combat operations, casualties, and national mobilization impacts. What most people mean by full-fledged is something else. Direct NATO-Russia combat or mass strikes intended to collapse state functions or use of unconventional weapons or formal expansion to new theaters and borders. Does this incident increase that risk? Yes, because disputed high-profile attacks raise the chance of miscalculation, especially if retaliation targets leadership-linked sites. Reuters reports Russia saying retaliation targets were chosen. But risk is not destiny. Diplomatics channel, even minimal ones, can still cap escalation if leaders decide the ceiling matters more than the message. If your standard is proved beyond doubt, then we do not have enough publicly verifiable evidence to declare as a fact who is lying. What we can say with confidence is this. Russia asserts 91 drone targets Putin's Novgorod residents. All were destroyed, no damage or casualties. Retaliation is planned. Negotiation stance will be reviewed. Ukraine denies it and says Russia is using lies to sabotage peace efforts and justify further attacks. Trump and Putin spoke and the Kremlin says Russia will reassess its negotiation stance after the alleged incident. A non-biased approach means refusing the temptation to fill gaps with certainty. Now, what to watch next is first, target selection in any Russian response, military versus government versus civilian infrastructure. Second, language shifts, reviewing versus ending negotiations. Third, evidence releases, debris photos, intercept footage with timestamps or third-party confirmation, anything that can be scrutinized. Fourth, US and European statements, whether they demand proof, urge restraint, or quietly mediate. Now, let me end with the most diplomatic conclusion possible. This incident, real, exaggerated, or misrepresented, functions as a high-stake bargaining chip. In diplomacy, perception can move markets, alliances, and missiles nearly as much as facts. If you want an evidence-first peace process, the next step is not a louder accusation. It's verifiable claims, clear red lines, and back-channel discipline, because retaliation without clarity is where wars widen by accident. Now, if you found this analysis and breakdown useful, subscribe, and in the next episode we'll map the escalation ladder. What moves are symbolic, what moves are strategic, and what moves are truly irreversible. Thank you for watching this one. See you in the next one.